Campfire Classics is a classic literature podcast. However, your hosts will occasionally use not-so-classy language and immature humor to describe very mature situations. As such, listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Ken Sandberg.
And I'm Heather Michelle Lawler.
Welcome to Campfire Classics, where we try to read those books that look really good on your shelf.
Puerto Rico, you lovely island, coming at you from San Juan.
So, continuing the world travels of Campfire Classics...
Heather's in another country. Well, not technically, I guess, because it's an American territory, but it's another country.
It is. No, it is part of America.
It is part of America.
It's just not one of the states.
Yeah. Which
they don't have the right to vote, which is horseshit.
That's bullshit because they don't. Well, I know why they don't want them to have the right to vote. I know exactly why. So fuck that. Let's get Puerto Rico officially as a state. Just saying.
Give them statehood.
Statehood. Let's do it.
Them in D.C.
Yeah, right?
Let them all vote.
Yeah, bring it on. Let's
upend this electoral college.
Wow, that got political faster than I think any episode ever has.
That went quick.
That went quick.
So welcome, listeners, to our political complaint podcast, where we whine about things that are upsetting us in the world.
Oh, my God.
Thanks for joining us, campers, around the campfire.
I would have so many things. That is a podcast I should probably have, but I think enough people already have that podcast.
Yeah, I think there are plenty of podcasts that are just people whining about stuff.
Yeah.
My thing this morning would be I had to move the car because it was street cleaning day, and the sanitation ticketing officer decided to be really tricksy and made the round of our block twice. So I went out to the car and saw that they were coming through. So I pulled the car around, left, did a few blocks like I always do, and then came back about half an hour before the time was supposed to end and saw that the ticketing agent was back.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, it was shady as hell. He ended up handing out 13 tickets on that one stretch of that one block alone because everyone thought the coast was clear.
Yep. My complaint today would be I'm on a boat, and as you all know, and we're in quarantine. I'm in day
4?
5? 5 of 10. And our food has been questionable at best. It is not good. It has not been good. And today, breakfast made me not feel good, and lunch was quite literally ice cold. So we're all having a good old time here in quarantine. But yeah, so I am on the Joy officially now. So I'm back on the Joy, even though we are quarantined to this lovely room right now. So they deliver us food 3 times a day. They, food, quote, quotey marks. They left us a shit ton of water, and all we can get other than that is coffee and tea. So Mama really wants a glass of wine right now. Y'all, it's sad.
Oh, but you have beautiful balcony views of the sunsets.
I do. And we're in Puerto Rico, and I'm getting paid to sit in this room. So, it's okay. But, I got to have something to complain about. But yes, so that's where I am in the world right now. And I want to personally thank Kim and Emily for filling in the past couple weeks while I've been, Emily was a few weeks ago, and then Kim filled in last week. For me, because chaos in Tampa, and just rehearsals were long and exhausting, and they were awesome. So thank you, ladies.
Yeah. Well, and thank you, listeners, for sticking with us through all of the craziness, because we bring in guest hosts and the show goes off with nary a hitch.
Yeah.
And and people even seem to enjoy hearing a new voice every once in a while.
Yeah. So and I have had a couple people approach me now from my cast that said they'd love to do some episodes. So if there's time when I'm not getting good service, I can record with them here on the ship.
And Ken can take a vacation.
And Ken can have a week off. So you might be getting to hear some of my Footloose co-stars on the podcast in the next 6 months. So yay.
Yeah, we'll see We'll see how that goes
See how it goes.
as things unfold.
As things unfold in the world that we live in, as the world turns.
Like sands through the hourglass, these are the days of our lives.
That really dates us, I feel. Is that show still on?
Days of Our Lives? I have no idea.
I don't know. Because there's still like all those soap operas for the most part are no longer running, but there are like a couple that are still going. And I'm like, how? Where? When?
Days of Our Lives is still running.
Holy shit.
It first aired in 1965.
Nuh-uh.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Airing nearly every weekday since November 8th, 1965, making it one of the longest running scripted television programs in history.
Yeah, I would think so.
It's like 56 years.
That's fucking insane. Oh my God. So like basically the people that were like children on the show, like children of the adults, are now like the parents or the grandparents even. Like if they were like, if you were like a 10-year-old on the show in 1965, you're now a grandparent.
Yep. There are cast members who could be coming back and coming back and coming back and playing all of the ages of man.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Wow. Wow. Well done, Days of Our Lives. Good job. Good job doing what you do. I've never seen an episode, but good job doing what you do.
Thank you for bringing us 56 years of me watching television while I was sick in bed and couldn't reach the remote.
Yeah, it was either that or Price is Right.
I feel like that's the only time I ever watched any of those as a kid, was like if I stayed home sick from school.
Yes.
And the remote was too far away for me to reach it, and it came on because they'd come on after like all of the morning cartoons ended, and then the morning game shows ended.
Yep.
And then it was like, oh, mid-afternoon. All right, here comes As the World Turns and Days of Our Lives and
Young and the Restless and
like, Guiding Light and all
those things. Yeah. Yeah. It was usually morning cartoons, then Price is Right, and then the soap operas. Yeah.
Yeah, and depending on what channel you were watching, there was also the daytime like aerobics show.
Yes. That was like early.
Either like sweating to the oldies or the Body Electric.
Yes, I remember those. I feel like those were early. Like one of those was at like 7 in the morning, and then there was another one at like 9 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I remember that. well.
I never played along at home with either of those.
Oh no. I just kind of laughed because they were just like his very 80s aerobics bouncing and like
yeah, and they would the one, it was always like they sang the song, was their theme song. I sing the Body Electric.
Oh my God, why is that in my brain? See, that space I could use for something else. for theme song. For anything else. Like if I didn't have pop culture in my head, I could probably be like a freaking genius, but no. Yeah. All that shit's taking up space in my brain.
Oh, it's okay. You're plenty genius enough, even with all that space being taken up.
Oh, thanks, baby.
Hey, camper. Because for some reason, Hey Camper is what I'm using instead of Hey Listener this week.
Oh, I like that. Hey Campers.
Hey Camper. What's something that lives rent-free in your brain since childhood that
you wish you could erase?
Either you wish you could erase, or at the very least that sort of tells us when you grew up.
Oh, yeah. Like useless information that dates you, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yes, we do. And we are the
Share
inquiring
around
minds.
the campfire. Let's do a kumbaya.
Thanks, campers. Kumbaya. So speaking of kumbayas, let's read these stories that we read.
So for our first-time listeners, and if we're doing our job right, every episode is somebody's first episode, what we do here at Campfire Classics is read stories. We read you stories. They are stories from the public domain because we don't like getting sued by authors, and we read stories that we have never seen before, which means we often stumble over words that we don't recognize, make terrible character choices based on not enough information and put completely inaccurate accents into strange regions of the globe. We also tend to laugh at accidental penis jokes and wildly inappropriate and outdated racism.
Because we're fun.
So that's what we do.
Yeah, that's what we do.
It's an edutainment podcast.
Edutainment, campers. Edutainment. I love it. So this week, we take turns picking stories. So since Ken has literally picked like 3 of the 4 stories in the past month, because he has picked 2 stories for our guest hosts, and then one of the times we recorded in Tampa, he picked the story. It's my turn. It's very much my turn. So this week, I have picked a new author that we have not experienced. Ooh. I know.
All right.
And I'm kind of excited about them because they had an interesting life, like not dramatic, but interesting. So this week, we are reading a story by American author Laura Elizabeth Howe. And she was
Laura Howe.
Laura Elizabeth Howe was born in Boston, Massachusetts, February 27th, 1850. So we going back.
We're going in the Wayback Machine.
We going back. And her family was fascinating. So her father was Dr. Samuel Gridley Howe. He was a teacher, a physician, and an abolitionist who co-founded the Perkins Institute of Massachusetts School for the Blind.
He founded Perkins?
Yes. So his famous students were Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller. He basically, the method they came up with there was sign language, or at the time, finger spell. So her father helped invent the language of sign language.
That's so cool.
Right? Laura's namesake was Laura Bridgman, who was a young woman who had been blinded and lost her hearing due to scarlet fever. And she was one of his first pupils at the Institute to learn fingerspell. And Laura wrote in a biography about her father, quote, "As a child, I did not think of the wonder of her any more than that of sunrise or a tree or any other miracle. She was Laura. She was blind, deaf, and dumb. Papa brought her out of prison."
That's so cool.
Yeah. I was like, that's beautiful. So that's her dad, and her mother was just as interesting. So her mother, Julia Ward Howe, was an activist poet who crafted the lyrics of the Union's theme song during the Civil War, the Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Oh.
She wrote the lyrics to Battle Hymn of the Republic.
All right. So she came from influential stock.
Influential. And it said with such illustrious parents. She had 4 siblings. They were introduced to the world of literature and culture and public figures from a very early age, and they were encouraged. She had 3 sisters. The women were encouraged to be creative and be independent at a very early time. I mean, we're still in the 1800s here, solidly.
Right.
She was 50 when the turn of the century happened. So, yeah. So good for her parents. So, she didn't have a lot of drama in her life, so I'm going to give you just some fun facts. So in June 17th, 1871, she married her neighbor, Henry Richards, who was a Boston architect, and they had 7 children, which makes my vagina hurt. After she had traveled a lot with her family in Europe as a kid, they'd take trips and stuff, but then they honeymooned in Europe. And they settled in the Yellow House in Gardner, Maine, so Henry could take over the family paper mill business. So they moved up to Maine for him to take over the family business. And this is when Laura started writing full time from home. While she was raising the kids, she had a very, very, very active writing career. She wrote over 90 books.
Ooh.
Many of them being short story collections. She did everything from nursery rhymes to nonsense poems. The St. Nicholas magazine published a lot of her work. Her first book.
A Santa magazine?
I don't know.
Did she write a bunch of Christmas short stories?
Not that I could see, but maybe. St. Nicholas. Her first book was called 5 Little Mice in a Mousetrap, which sounds really sad.
That sounds horrifying.
And that came out in 1880. And then her next book was Sketches and
twisted ass Hans Christian Andersen shit.
Well,
what the hell?
She actually has been compared to him a little bit, like with her fairy tales, at least. Like she also wrote like she wrote biographies, she wrote adult stories and whatnot too. But she also was published in 1881, which was Sketches and Scraps, which was illustrated by her husband. So little family business.
He's an architect.
Yeah.
He knows how to put pen to paper and make things look pretty.
Exactly. She wrote about both of her parents. She wrote a biography about both of her parents called Two Noble Lives, Samuel Gridley Howe and Julia Ward Howe. That came out in 1911. She also collaborated with her sister, Maud Howe Elliott, and their biography of their mother, who wrote the lyrics to Battle Hymn of the Republic, which was titled Julia Ward Howe, 1819 to 1910, won the Pulitzer Prize in 1917.
Awesome.
So she has a Pulitzer.
So she won a Pulitzer.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So she also wrote many other biographies, including for Abigail Adams. She wrote Abigail Adams and Her Times. That was published in 1917. She also wrote a biography about Joan of Arc in 1919, and she dedicated it to Theodore Roosevelt, who was, quote, also a soldier. And then she also, of course, wrote a biography about Laura Bridgman, and it was called Laura Bridgman, The Story of an Opened Door, who was, the star pupil who she is named after. Right. And so she, her final biography was her own biography, an autobiography called Stepping Westward in 1931. It was her personal memoirs of traveling Europe and anecdotes of famous literary friends from her life in Boston and Maine and Concord and New Hampshire. Some of her friends included Nathaniel Hawthorne and Louisa May Alcott. So good friends to have.
She spent that 15 years towards the end of her career basically writing biographies of badass women.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah. What a badass. I know, right? I'm like, cool. Yeah. I was like, how have we not stumbled upon this woman before? I mean, she's like amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have just this is something that I think is an interesting tidbit about sign language.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that if you speak American Sign Language, you can probably communicate with someone who speaks French Sign Language, but not with someone who speaks British Sign Language?
Are you serious? That's weird.
Because American Sign Language, like the vocabulary that was established when it finally became American Sign Language, was heavily based on French Sign Language, because the person who established the ASL vocabulary worked with the guy who created the French Sign Language vocabulary.
Oh.
So their hand signs for words are very similar. Many of them overlap. Whereas if you're trying to talk to someone who speaks British Sign Language, presumably two countries that speak the same language verbally, but the sign language is completely different.
That is so weird.
Yep. Australian Sign Language is also its own.
Well, yeah,
its own thing.
Can UK Sign Language and Australian Sign Language connect? Because they tend to be very similar.
There is more overlap than with American, but there are lots of signs that are very particular to Australian Sign Language that don't mean anything in any other language.
Okay, interesting. Wow, did not know that. So fun facts, more fun facts on top of fun facts. I love that.
Yep. There you go.
Cool. It's always been something I wish I could learn. And I had a roommate in undergrad in New York who spoke fluent sign language, and she's an interpreter and stuff. And it was because she had a deaf sibling. And it's just, I find it to be beautiful. It's such a beautiful language.
It also strikes me as just such a practical language.
Yes.
There are times when you want to communicate with someone, but you don't want to make a ton of noise.
Yep. But back to Laura. Oh my gosh. Back to Laura Elizabeth Howe. They also don't bring us the best coffee. So back to Laura Elizabeth Howe. And, after like that was very interesting. So on top of all the like literary contributions she had to the world, her husband and her were also involved in several philanthropic endeavors over the years, including founding Camp Merriweather, which was a like camp for boys, and also established the Gardner Library Association. They also established the first public high school in their area in Maine. They worked to bring public health nurses to the area, and they also had many causes that were striving to stop abusive child labor practices. So
awesome. These are cool people.
Yeah, this slayed the game. Like, I'm just like, I wish I could have met this woman. She just sounds amazing. She was productive.
Sounds like her autobiography is probably a pretty dope read.
I know. I think I might actually download it on my Kindle and check her out.
Pick it up and read it?
Yeah. So she was active writing until she was 81. And she died when she was 93, which was very old at that time.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
she made it to 1943?
1943. So she was only 7 years out from when my parents were born.
Well, which also means she made it through the Civil War and into the Second World War.
Yes. She
was a teenager during the Civil War. She would have been like in her 60s during the First World War, and she made it to the beginning of the Second World War. She saw the beginning
of the Second World War. That's pretty crazy.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Whoo-wee. All right. Which means she also went through the Spanish flu. She also went through the Spanish flu, which was like the last version of COVID kind of thing.
Yep. Saw the first manned flight.
Yes. I mean, and electricity. And I mean, like that the Industrial Revolution. I mean, everything. She saw everything.
Like that's a
lifetime.
Saw a lot of big ass changes in that lifetime.
Yeah. Well, that's like my great grandma, who I knew quite well. She passed away when I was in college. She was born in 1900 and passed away in 2001. So, like, what the fuck?
A lot of big ass changes in that lifetime.
So, anyway, badass women. So, Richardson, one last fun fact, and then we will actually get to the story. So, she wrote a nonsense poem called Ella Telephony. It continues to delight. I actually know this poem, and you probably do too, and you don't even know. So it was emerged because it was adapted and aired during Sesame Street for a phonics lesson for the letter E. This is the poem. I've got it. Once there was an elephant who tried to use the telephant. No, I mean the elephone who tried to use the telephone. Dear me, I'm not certain quite that even now I've got it right. However, it was. He got his trunk entangled in the telefunk. The more he tried to get it free, the louder buzzed the telefee. I fear I'd better drop the song of Ella Hop and Telethong. So I actually know, like, when I started reading that, I'm like, I totally know this poem. I remember this.
It sounds vaguely familiar.
I don't even know if I saw it on Sesame Street, but I've definitely read this poem before. Like, it was in like a collection of like children's poems when I was a kid, because I loved poetry when I was a kid. So like, I was like, oh my God, yes, this one. So
yeah, although the end of it makes me want Sisqó to start singing.
I don't know if it says it's actually, I think it's telethong, not telethong. I think it's PH. It's PH, but I want it to be telethong.
Hello and welcome to our fundraising telethong.
That thong, thong, thong,
this
thong.
Year, we're raising money for Doctors Without Borders. Please call in to our telethong.
I'm into it.
Welcome to the New York City Marathon.
Oh no. That was yesterday, wasn't it?
26.2 miles of thongs.
Wasn't the New York City Marathon
that was yesterday as we are recording, yeah.
Yeah. I saw people running it. Anyway, so the story you will be Thong, the thong, thong, thong. The story you will be reading today by Laura E. Richards, which is what she went by, is Maine to the Rescue.
All right, let's start this fire.
Let's do it.
Maine to the Rescue by Laura E. Richards. Oh dear, it's snowing. Hurrah, hurrah, it's snowing.
Sorry, I didn't mention that the reason I picked this story is I read the first line. I was like, this seems appropriate for the season. Not where I am because it's 85 fucking degrees out and 100% humidity. But from what I've heard back where you are and the majority of humans, the fall is solidly here.
Massachusetts looked up from her algebra. She was the head of the school. She was rosy and placid as the apple she was generally eating when not in class.
Wait, is this kid's name Massachusetts?
Well, appears not to be a kid because she is the head of the school. Okay. But yes, Massachusetts is her name.
I mean, I don't know what kind of school this is.
I suppose she could be like head girl.
Head girl who eats apples. All right. Her name's Massachusetts. Apples. Fabulous.
Massachusetts. Apples and algebra were the things she cared most about in school life. Whence come these varying cries, she said, taking her feet off the fender and trying to be interested, though her thoughts went on with A 1/6 B equals.
I hate this girl. I don't like maths.
Oh, Virginia is grumbling because it is snowing and Maine is feeling happy over it. That's all, said Rhode Island, the smallest girl in Miss Whalen's school. Mm-hmm. Poor Virginia. It is rather hard on you to have snow in March when you have just got your box of spring clothes from home. It is atrocious, said Virginia, a tall, graceful, languishing girl. Oh, let me try that again then. It is atrocious, said Virginia, a tall, graceful, languishing girl. How could they send me to such a place where it is winter all the spring? Why, at home the violets are in blossom and the trees are coming down, the birds singing. And at home, broke in Maine, who was a tall girl too, but lithe and breezy as a young willow, with flyaway hair and dancing brown eyes. At home, all is winter, white, beautiful, glorious winter, with ice 2 or 3 feet thick on the rivers, and great fields and fields of snow, all sparkling in the sun, and the sky a vast sapphire overhead without a speck. Oh, the glory of it, the splendor of it. And here it is neither fish, flesh, fowl, nor good red herring, a wretched makeshift season which they call winter because they don't know what else to call it.
This bitch sounds like she's from Minnesota. She's like,
right? I was just gonna say,
this girl is you.
Yep. Like, I grew up in Minnesota. I don't need a coat.
This ain't fucking
we don't
winter.
Have real winter here.
Come on, it's not even below 32. I'm wearing my shorts.
That was the first time it snowed in Kansas City, and a couple of our Southern classmates got all excited about the snow, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't even really snow. It
this
like
is
frosted
snow.
overnight.
This is like flake, like it's like goose feathers that like hit us in the face for like an hour." Yeah. So I do love that all the students have names that are states or locations. Yeah.
Well, and they are clearly personifications of the states.
Of the states, yeah.
Come, said old New York, who was 17 years old and had her own ideas of dignity. Let us alone, you two outsiders. The Empire State would not change climates with either of you.
Oh my God, obsessed with her. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Fuck.
No, indeed. chimed in young New York, who always followed her leader in everything from opinions down to hair ribbons. No, indeed, repeated Virginia with languid scorn, because you couldn't get anyone to change with you, my dear. Young New York reddened. You are so disagreeable, Virginia, she said. I'm sure glad I don't have to live with you all the year round. Personal remarks, said Massachusetts, looking up calmly. 1 cent, young New York, for the missionary fund. Thank you. Let me give you each half an apple and you will feel better.
That's right. Bribe the children with food. That's how it works, man. Yep. I mean, honestly. At least it's an apple and not like here's have some taffy. It'll be good.
Well, it's Massachusetts. It's either going to be an apple or like maple syrup.
Maple syrup.
Apple dipped in maple syrup.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds good. It's like a new version of it's like a Massachusetts version of a caramel apple.
Yeah, I like
nom,
it.
Nom, nom, nom.
She solemnly divided a large red apple and gave the halves to the 2 scowling girls who took them, laughing in spite of themselves, and went their separate ways. Why didn't you let them have it out, Massachusetts? Said Maine, laughing. You never let anyone have a good row. Slang, said Massachusetts, looking up again. 1 cent for the missionary fund. You will clothe the heathen at this rate, Maine. That is the 4th cent today. Row isn't slang, protested Maine, feeling, however, for her pocketbook. Vulgar colloquial, returned Massachusetts quietly. And perhaps you would go away now, Maine, or else be quiet. Have you learned? No, I haven't, said Maine. I will do it very soon, dear Saint Apple. I must look at the snow a little more.
I just want to point out that Massachusetts would not like this podcast if she doesn't like the word row as slang.
Right.
When
slang
I'm like
and vulgar
and
colloquial.
vulgarity, it's like fuck shit. I just had to throw that in there, so you have to put a meow meow. It's been a while.
She also doesn't like personal remarks.
Well, then she'd really
That was
hate
the first one.
She would hate our podcast. Suck it, Massachusetts. You heard me, Boston.
Sorry, Massachusetts. I hear you're a lovely state.
You heard me, Boston.
Oh. You going specifically after Boston? Because I feel like Boston will fight back.
Well, that's where she's from, the writer. So I assume that's her take on Massachusetts is Boston.
Oh, well, that's why Massachusetts is in charge.
That's why that's where she was raised until she got married and then moved. And then she moved to Maine. So Massachusetts and Maine are having it out. I love it. This is why we do fun facts, y'all. This is why we do fun facts. Now we know the context and we can
it's good to have context.
It's great.
Yeah. And then you can get all like deep and academic about it.
Oh, and I will. I'm very deep and academic.
Yeah, that's what they say about you on the street.
That's
academic.
Ew.
You don't think deep and academic are big selling points on the street?
She goes deep and academic.
What does that even mean? Maine went dancing off to her room where she threw the window open and looked out with delight. The girl caught up a double handful and tossed it about, laughing for pure pleasure. Then she leaned out to feel the beating of the flakes on her face. Really quite a respectable little snowstorm, she said, nodding approval at the whirling white drift. Go on, and you will be worthwhile, my dear. She went singing to her algebra, which she could not have done if it had not been snowing.
She's like, I don't do math unless it's actual winter.
The snow went on increasing from hour to hour. By noon, the wind began to rise. Before night, it was blowing a furious gale. Furious blasts clutched at the windows and rattled them like castanets. The wind howled and shrieked and moaned till it seemed as if the air were filled with angry demons fighting to possess the square white house. Many of the pupils of Miss Whalen's school came to the tea table with disturbed faces, but Massachusetts was as calm as usual, and Maine was jubilant. "Isn't it a glorious storm?" she cried exultingly. "I didn't know there could be such a storm in this part of the country, Miss Wayland. Will you give me some milk, please?" "There is no milk, my dear," said Miss Wayland, who looked rather troubled. "The milkman has not come and probably will not come tonight. There has never been such a storm in my lifetime," she added. "Do you have such storms at home, my dear?" "Oh, yes, indeed," Maine said cheerfully. "I don't know that we often have so much wind as this, but the snow is nothing out of the way. Why, on Palm Sunday last year, our milkman dug through a drift 20 feet deep to get at his cows. He was the only milkman who ventured out, and he took me and the minister's wife to church in his little red pung."
Oh, what is it? First of all, what's a pung?
I don't know. It is spelled P-U-N-G.
P-U-N-G. Let me look it up. Just a second. It's going to take a dictionary term. It's a one-horse sleigh consisting of a box on runners. So it's a
one-horse open sleigh. Hey.
Yes. Jingle bells, jingle. That's exactly what it is. Great. Amazing. All right. So I love that this
jingle
girl.
Jingle bells to my cows, jingle all the way.
Milkman came and took us to
milk my
the
cows
church.
and every day.
Yeah.
So the milkman took Maine and the minister's wife to church in his little jingle bell sleigh.
On a jingle bell sleigh. Yay.
We were the only women in church, I remember. Miss Betsy Folensby, who had not missed going to church in 15 years, started on foot after climbing out of her bedroom window to the shed roof and sliding down. All her doors were blocked up and she lived alone, so there was no one to dig her out. But she got stuck in a drift about halfway and had to stay there till one of the neighbors came and pulled her out.
That sounds like a great way to die.
Sounds like a populated enough town.
That's like some Minnesota, Minot, North Dakota bullshit right there. It's like I climbed out my fucking second-story window to go to church because there was that much snow.
That sounds like the kind of thing that the fire department would get called in for in Mayberry.
Yes. It's like
Mrs. Cleaver would call the fire department because her neighbor got stuck waist deep in a snowdrift.
On her way to church.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
All the girls laughed at this, and even Miss Wayland smiled, but suddenly she looked grave again. "Hark," she said, and listened. "Did you not hear something?" "We hear Boreas, Auster, Eurus, and Zephyrus," answered Old New York. "Nothing else." At that moment, there was a lull in the screeching of the wind. All listened intently, and a faint sound was heard from without, which was not that of the blast. "A child," said Massachusetts, rising quickly. "It's a child's voice. I will go, Miss Wayland." "I cannot permit it, Alice," cried Miss Wayland in great distress. "I cannot allow you to think of it. You are just recovering from a severe cold, and I am responsible to your parents. What shall we do? It certainly sounds like a child crying out in the pitiless storm. Of course, it may be a cat."
Child cat, aren't they the same thing?
Go out and save it either way.
I know, either way, you should probably go check out this poor thing that's crying in the snow.
Yeah. Maine had gone to the window at the first alarm and now turned with shining eyes. It is a child, she said quietly. I have no cold, Miss Wayland. I am going, of course. Passing by Massachusetts, who had started out of her usual calm and stood in some perplexity, she whispered, If it were freezing, it wouldn't cry. I shall be in time. Get a ball of stout twine.
Fat twine? Yeah.
Yes. She disappeared. In 3 minutes, she returned, dressed in her blanket coat, reaching halfway below her knees, scarlet leggings, and gaily wrought moccasins.
I know
On
that
her
blanket
head,
coat
a
very
fur
well.
Cap.
I know the blanket coat very well. I call them the marshmallow coats. I call it my marshmallow coat.
Yep.
It's the
That's the
poofy
one.
coat. The poof coat.
Yep. Put on so she's going out cosplaying as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yes, pretty much. Or just cold Heather in New York. Chicago. Mainly Chicago. Chicago was fucking cold.
On her head, a fur cap with a band of sea otter fur projecting over her eyes.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, was that
Well,
around
I mean,
her hat? That's
the headband over her eyes.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. That would be like very waterproof.
Very waterproof and warm. I mean, and that was also back, when they killed animals like that for stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, and like I actually watched an episode of I forget what was it called, Life Below Zero or something like that. I watched it with Suzanne when I was staying with her in New Jersey. It's like a reality show, kind of like Naked and Afraid, but it's like survivalists that live above the Arctic Circle.
Mm-hmm.
And they follow them, and there's an indigenous family, like these otters. So these are river otters, but these river otters had like dammed up their fresh water supply, and so they had to like kill them, because if they didn't kill them, they would redo it again, and if they destroyed their houses without killing them, they would starve to death.
Right.
So like it becomes a whole like nature versus like and they were like, well, we'll kill them and we'll use their skins and eat them. Basically, we're going to like, not waste these animals. So they had sea otter, they had,
and then it cleared up there.
They had river otter like hats and stuff like that they made. So anyway, random fun facts I saw on reality TV.
Yeah. In her hand, she held a pair of snowshoes. She had had no opportunity to wear her snowshoeing suit all winter, and she was quite delighted.
Yay!
My child, said Miss Wayland faintly, how can I let you go? My duty to your parents. What are those strange things? What use are you going to make of them? By way of answer, Maine slipped her feet into the snowshoes and, with Massachusetts' aid, quickly fastened the thongs.
Seriously? Oh my God, the thongs are back!
It comes full circle. Although I will say,
thongs.
I don't think a thong is your best choice if you're going out into a winter storm.
No, I would definitely at least wear like boy shorts or something.
Yeah, probably some like long thermals.
Like, yeah, some thermal long underwear sounds way more appropriate than like fastening on some thongs.
Yep.
Seems, I do love that thong came full circle. Who would have known?
Yep.
Who knew?
That's it. That's the one.
Thong full circle.
Dear camper, dear listener, and in this case, I'm actually specifically talking to my mom, who will text me to correct this. I am very much aware that when she says thongs, she is talking about the leather tie, the thong
over the
that
like
ties
racket
on the
shoes.
snowshoes.
Yeah. Yes. We know.
This is a bit.
We know, Jamie. But it's a funny word.
And probably going to be the basis for the title of this episode.
Something about thongs, yes.
Yep. The twine, she said. Yes, that will do. Plenty of it. Tie it to the door handle, square knot. So, I'm all right, dear. Don't worry. Like a flash, the girl was gone, out into the howling night. Miss Wayland wrung her hands and wept, and most of the girls wept with her. Virginia, who was curled up in a corner, really sick with fright, beckoned to Massachusetts. Is there any chance of her coming back alive? She asked in a whisper. I wish I had made up with her, but we may all die in this awful storm.
I love that Virginia is the young version of Blanche Dubois.
Oh, yeah. She's absolutely just a giant drama queen.
She is a super drama queen that, like, is a little unstable.
Yep. Nonsense, said Massachusetts. Try to have a little sense, Virginia. Maine is all right and can take care of herself. And as for whimpering at the wind, when you have a good roof over your head, it is too absurd. Fucking Southerners.
So, she's like, I've never seen snow before. My word. Oh, I need some sweet tea. my pearls, my pearls.
For the first time since she came to school, Massachusetts forgot the study hour, as did everyone else. And in spite of her brave efforts at cheerful conversation, it was a sad and anxious group that sat about the fire in the pleasant parlor. Maine went out quickly and closed the door behind her, then stood still a moment, listening for the direction of the cry. She did not hear it at first, but presently it broke out, a piteous little wail, sounding louder now in the open air. The girl bent her head to listen. Where was the child? The voice came from the right, surely.
It's a ghost. It's a ghost.
I think you've put your head too firmly in ghost stories. I'm thinking this is actually a kid.
It probably is, but, why not?
Maybe it's DC.
It's DC.
Maybe it's Puerto Rico.
It's Rhode Island. It's so
No,
tiny
we've already
you can't
met Rhode
see
Island.
it. Oh, that's right.
We've already
did.
met Rhode Island.
It's
wait, what year was this story written?
I can't remember. Like it was around the turn of the century.
So it might be one of the newest states.
It's like Nebraska. No,
Yeah,
Nebraska.
well, I think Washington became a state in like the 1890s.
Yeah. Yeah, Iowa was 1851. So, yeah, it's like North Dakota or one of those. It's one of those northern cold states. Yeah.
A state that it'll be one of the northern cold states because then it'll be okay in the cold. The baby will be like, what'd you pick me up for?
Be like, I'm playing.
I'm fine.
I'm sledding, bitch. You want to join me? Strap on your thongs and let's go play.
Baby actually in a thong.
Yeah, baby in a thong.
She would make her way down the end of the road, and then she could tell better which direction the cry was coming from. Grasping the ball of twine firmly, she stepped forward, planting the broad snowshoes lightly in the snow. Dry snow. As she turned the corner of the house, an icy blast caught her as if with furious hands, shook her like a leaf, and flung her roughly against the wall.
Ouch.
Her forehead struck the corner, and for a moment she was stunned, but the blood trickling down her face quickly brought her to herself.
Ew,
she set her teeth, folded her arms tightly, and stooping forward, measured her strength once more with that of the gale. This time, it seemed as if she were cleaving a wall of ice, which opened only to close behind her. On she struggled, unrolling her twine as she went. The child's cry sounded louder, and she took fresh heart. Pausing, she clapped her hand to her mouth repeatedly, uttering a shrill, long call. It was a whoop which her father had taught her in their woodland rambles at home.
Whoop, 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 whoop. That's what I imagine.
Yeah.
Or she's just singing, or she's just like, that thong, da thong. That's it. That's the one.
Thong, ta, thong, thong, thong.
Thong, 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 thong.
New version of Marco Polo.
Yeah, right.
What's the response?
Song, thong, song, thong, song.
Yeah. Or is
that.
it like, I'm trying to think, is it something like, you got thong, 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 and then the response is, baby got back.
Hey, like that. I love it. I love it.
Okay, this one off the rails.
Bring that one to the pool next summer, kids.
That'd be a hell of a mashup.
The thong song and Baby Got Back.
Yeah.
And then I want to throw in like some Lizzo and some like Cardi B, like with WAP. Put WAP in with those two as well.
If you are a musician who does song mixes, that idea is on the house. Just please like hashtag Campfire Classics.
Hashtag Campfire Classics. Yeah.
What's happening? Struggling, rolling. Child's cry sounded louder, gave her fresh heart. Whooping cry.
Whoop, whoop.
Ah, yes.
She whooped.
She thonged.
She thonged.
The childish wail stopped. She repeated the cry louder and louder, then shouted at the top of her lungs, "Hold on! Help is coming!" Again and again, the wind buffeted her and forced her backward a step or two, but she lowered her head and wrapped her arms more tightly about her body and plodded on. Once she fell, stumbling over a stump. Twice she ran against a tree, for the white darkness was absolutely blinding, and she saw nothing, felt nothing but snow. Snow. At last, her snowshoe struck something hard. She stretched out her hands. It was the stone wall, and now as she crept alongside it, the child's wail broke out again close at hand. "Mother! Oh, mother! Mother!" The girl's heart beat fast. "Where are you?" she cried. At the same moment, she stumbled against something soft. A mound of snow, was it? No, for it moved and cried, and little hands clutched her dress.
Oh,
she
God.
saw nothing, but put her hands down and touched the little cold face. She dragged the child out of the snow, which had almost covered it, and set it on its feet. "Who are you?" she asked, putting her face down close, while by vigorous patting and rubbing she tried to give life to the benumbed, cowering little figure which staggered along helplessly, clutching with half-frozen fingers. "Benny Withers," sobbed the child. Mother sent me for the clothes, but I can't get them." "Benny Withers," cried Maine. "Why, you live close by. Why didn't you go home, child?" "I can't," cried the boy. "I can't see nothing. I tried to get to the school, and I tried to get home, and I can't get nowhere except against this wall. Let me stay here now. I want to rest me a little."
Oh, no. Buddy, no, that's a bad life choice. See, the boys in this story are stupid.
Yep. Well, he's the only one so far.
Yeah, he's like, "I'll just stay in the snow. It's fine."
He would have sunk down again, but Maine caught him up in her strong young arms. "Here, climb up on my back, Benny," she said cheerfully. "Hold on tight round my neck, and you shall rest while I take you home. So, that's a brave boy. Upsy now, there you are. Now put your head on my shoulder, close, and hold on." Ah, how Maine blessed the heavy little brother at home who would ride on his sister's back long after Mama said he was too big. How she
He's a
blessed
fat boy.
the carrying up and down stairs, the horsey rides through the garden and down the lane, which has made her shoulders strong.
Bitches, now this girl's fearless and she works out. I mean, come on. Yeah. Love me a strong female.
Benny Withers was 8 years old, but he was small and slender and no heavier than 6-year-old Philip. No need of telling the child to hold on. Once he was up out of the cruel snowbed, he clung desperately round the girl's neck and pressed his head close against the woolen stuff. Maine pulled her ball of twine from her pocket. Fortunately, it was a large one, and the twine, though strong, was fine, so that there seemed to be no end to it, and once more lowered her head and set her teeth and moved forward, keeping close to the wall in the direction of Mrs. Withers' cottage. For a while, she saw nothing. When she looked up under the fringe of otter fur, which, long and soft, kept the snow from blinding her, nothing but the white, whirling drift which beat with icy, stinging blows in her face.
I love that this bitch was like, I'm not going to just take him back to the school. I'm going to find my way to the house.
Yeah, this is not the most logical decision making.
I mean, she's very gung ho and clearly like is comfortable in the snow, I guess. But like, I was like, I'd just take him back to the school and get him warmed up.
Which is lovely, but just take him back to the school and wait for the storm to pass.
Yeah,
like you got a string that's going to bring you right there.
Yeah. I mean, mom will think her son is dead, but, she'll get over it.
But only for a little while.
Only for a bit. And then it's going to be like this beautiful, miraculous, like, reunion.
It's only long enough for her to have like a tiny mental breakdown and maybe like one or two little baby heart attacks.
Exactly.
But at last her eyes caught a faint glimmer of light, and presently a brighter gleam showed her Mrs. Withers' gray cottage, now white like the rest of the world. Bursting open the cottage door, she almost threw the child into the arms of his mother. The woman, who had been weeping wildly, could hardly believe her eyes. She caught the little boy and smothered him with kisses, chafing his cold hands and crying over him. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't know till he was gone. I told him at noon he was to go, never thinking 'twould be like this. I was sure he was lost and dead, but I couldn't leave my sick baby. Bless you, whoever you are, man or woman. But stay and get warm and rest ye. You're never going out again in this awful storm." But Maine was gone.
She's like, bye. Peace.
I'm out.
Bye. She didn't even like stay to tell her name. She just like
Nope.
drops this child off and she's like, and she's going back now.
Yeah.
Follow the breadcrumbs, aka fat twine.
She's making bolder and bolder and dimmer choices.
Well, it seems like she's doing all right though.
She's doing all right, but like stay and wait out the storm.
But then everyone else will be worried about her.
Okay, so they'll all have a little anxiety attack and a couple of little cardiac episodes.
Yeah, I understand her logic, but it's not necessarily like what I would do because I don't like the snow. So, but
Yeah,
clearly
well, I mean,
this
in
girl
fairness-
is a little fucking like winter ninja. So
Yeah. And in fairness, it is probably exactly what I would do. I'd just keep pushing through. But
yeah.
But I'm not very clever.
Well, then Maine and you connect on a deep level. There you go.
In Miss Whalen's parlor, the suspense was becoming unendurable. They had heard Maine's whoop, and some of them, Miss Wayland herself among the number, thought it was a cry of distress. But Massachusetts rightly interpreted the call and assured them that it was a call of encouragement to the bewildered child. Then came silence within the house and a prolonged clamor, a sort of witches' chorus with wailing and shrieking without. Once a heavy branch was torn from one of the great elms and came thundering down on the roof. This
shit.
proved the finishing touch for poor Virginia. She went into violent hysterics and was carried off to bed by Miss Wayland and Old New York.
And there's Blanche Dubois' origin story.
There's Blanche having her little
No,
breakdown.
that was her first breakdown. Was there? Is the storm and the tree, and she's like, "Oh my god!" And that's where it all started, right there.
That was the beginning of the whole thing. She was sent to some boarding school up north somewhere and never recovered.
Never got better.
Massachusetts presently ventured to
Blame
explore
it
a
on
little.
the Maine. Yeah. Sorry.
That's a good one. I like that.
I was like, I blame Maine, and then that came to my head. So
Yep.
blame it on the Maine. Yeah, yeah. Blanche Dubois has gone crazy tonight. But I'd have to be lip syncing for that to actually like. Ooh, damn, Milli Vanilli, burn.
That's all right. Still, that's a good pull. That's a good pull. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I feel like we've got about 8% of our listeners who will
get that
all parts of that joke.
Let
us know if you're one of that 8%.
Lindsay. I'm looking at Lindsay right now, whose birthday was like yesterday or the day before. So happy birthday, Lindsay.
Happy birthday, Lindsay.
Anyway.
That's great.
Yay.
Massachusetts presently ventured to explore a little. She hastened through the hall to the front door, opened it a few inches, and put her hand on the twine which was fastened to the handle. What was her horror to find that it hung loose, swinging idly in the wind. Sick at heart, she shut the door, pressing her hands over her eyes, trying to think. Maine must be lost in the howling storm. She must find her, but where and how? Oh, if Miss Wayland had only let her go first. She was older. It would not have mattered so much. But now, quick, she would wrap herself warmly and slip out without anyone knowing.
So we were right. Massachusetts is like the head girl.
Yes.
She's like not the teacher, but she's like the oldest girl there. She's like she's like the sorority sister president or something like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Ooh. Thong song.
La 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 la. Thong song.
Thong song.
Slip out without anyone knowing. Yeah. The girl was turning to fly upstairs when suddenly something fell heavily against the door outside. There was a fumbling for the handle. The next moment it flew open and something white stumbled into the hall, shut the door, and sat down heavily on the floor. Personal rudeness, gasped Maine, struggling for breath. You shut the door in my face. 1 cent for the missionary fund. Callback humor.
Yep.
The great storm was over. The sun came up and looked down on a strange white world. No fences, no walls, only a smooth ridge where one of these had been. Trees, which the day before had been quite tall, now looked like dwarves, spreading their broad arms not far from the snow carpet beneath them. Roads there were none. All was smooth, save where some huge drift nodded its crest like a billowing curling for its downward rush. Maine, spite of her scarred face, which showed as many patches as that of a court lady in King George's times, was jubilant. Tired? Not a bit of it. A little stiff, just enough to need limbering out, as they said at home. There's no butter, she announced at breakfast. There is no milk, no meat for dinner. Therefore, I go a-snowshoeing. Dear Miss Wayland, let me go. I have learned my algebra, and I shall be discovering unknown quantities at every step, which will be just as instructive.
That's right. Fuck math. Go live your life. That is real. Fuck math. Go and adventure. That is real.
Learning out in the real world.
That is my favorite line in any of our books so far, kind of.
Miss Wayland could refuse nothing to the heroine of last night's adventure. Better than Miss Wayland could not refuse the heroine.
Well, I mean, no, they're more in the opium times, like back here.
Yeah. Behold Maine, therefore, triumphant, sallying forth, clad once more in her blanket suit and dragging her sled behind her. There was no struggling now, no hand-to-hand wrestling with storm demons. The sun laughed from the sky as blue and deep as her own skies of Maine, and the girl laughed with him as she walked along, the powdery snow flying in a cloud from her snowshoes at every step. Such a sight had never been seen in Mentor Village before. The people came running to their upper windows, their lower ones were for the most part buried in snow, and stared with all their eyes at the strange apparition. In the street, life was beginning to stir. People had found, somewhat to their own surprise, that they were alive and well after the blizzard, and knots of men were clustered here and there discussing the storm, while some were already at work tunneling through the drifts. Mr. Perkins, the butcher.
The butcher.
Perkins?
Yeah.
Perkins.
Yeah.
That's the name of her dad's school, right?
Yeah. The Perkins Institute. Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Perkins, the butcher, had just got his door open, and great was his amazement when Maine hailed him from the top of a great drift and demanded a quarter of mutton and some soup meat. Yes, miss, he stammered, open-mouthed with astonishment. I've got the meat, but my team isn't out this morning. I don't know about sending it.
How the fuck did you get here? Is what he meant to say.
I have a team here, said Maine, quietly, pulling her sled alongside. Give me the mutton, Mr. Perkins. You may charge it to Miss Wayland, please, and I will take it home.
Oh, my God.
The butterman and the grocer were visited in the same way, and Maine, rather embarrassed by the concentrated observation of the whole village, turned to pull her laden sled back, when suddenly a window was thrown open and a voice exclaimed, Young woman, I will give you $10 for the use of those snowshoes for an hour. Maine looked up in amazement and laughed merrily when she saw the well-known countenance of the village doctor. Wait! You, my dear young lady, cried a good man. This is Maine to the rescue indeed. I might have known it was you, but I repeat my offer. Make it anything you please, only let me have the snowshoes. I cannot get a horse out, and I have 2 patients dangerously ill. What is your price for the magic shoes? My price, doctor, repeated Maine, looking up with dancing eyes. My price is 1 cent for the missionary fund.
Aww.
The snowshoes are yours, and I will get home somehow with my sled and the mutton. So she did, and Dr. Fowler made his calls with the snowshoes and saved a life and brought cheer and comfort to many. But it was $10 and not 1 cent, which he gave to the missionary fund.
Yeah!
The end. That was an adorable one.
That was delightful.
I like it.
That girl's my hero. I love her. Maine to the rescue. Yes.
I want to be her when I grow up.
I know. I want to be her like every day.
When I grow up to be a 16-year-old girl, I want to be just like her.
I love that she was just like, fuck it, I got this. And like the entire village is like, this girl's the coolest.
Yeah, in the movie version of this short story, she's played by Lady Mormont from Game of Thrones.
Yes, I was trying to cast it while you were reading, and I was like, no, that is perfect casting.
Yep.
She's even like the right age right now, like, because she was like 10, 11 when she did Game of Thrones. So yeah, she's like
right around the right age.
She's around 16.
15, 16, something like that.
All right, producers, let's do this. Maine to the rescue.
Yeah.
It's even got a very similar theme of the winter thing.
Yeah, it'll be her version of that Leonardo DiCaprio movie where he like fights a bear.
Where he fights and he won an Academy Award. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
instead
a little less aggressive.
a little, but we could, we can add some like, some cinematic, she has to like fight off an animal on her way to save the child or something like.
Yeah. On her way back to school, she gets abducted by aliens and then it turns into Independence Day.
Or like wolves and it's very Beauty and the Beast and like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Good times. Good times.
Yeah. She goes away and is raised by wolves and
then comes back and teaches them all how to live in the wild.
Founds Rome and
founds Rome.
Romulus and Remus were two twin babies who were raised by a wolf.
I know, baby.
And Romulus and Remus founded Rome.
So did Mowgli in the jungle.
Yeah.
Very similar story there.
And Tarzan with the monkeys.
And Tarzan.
With the apes.
Yep. So, well, that was delightful. I am so glad that was the story.
Yeah.
I liked
Thank
her.
you, Laura E. Richards. I might be tracking down a couple of those biographies that she wrote because those sound super interesting.
They sound fantastic. And I really liked her writing style. It was very like, considering she's one of the older authors we've read, it was very like, it didn't feel like old timey. Like it wasn't being fancy to be fancy.
Reading it had a sentence structure and a feel very similar to the haircut, the Ring Laudner.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it had that sort of delivery feel about it.
Like Americana,
anyway.
a very Americana, No.
Well, and there were sentences that were clearly missing words, but they were missing words because it was like, well, this is how I'm going to say the thing.
Because it's a child speaking or like it's, it's there for like character context. And yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
I liked that. Yay for another female author. We don't get a ton of those other than like, our muses. We get a lot of Agatha.
Other than Agatha, which we've done a lot of.
We get a lot of Agatha, but like a lot of the other women we've read, they don't have a ton of short stories that fit in our time frame. So I'm really glad I found this lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what a fucking fascinating family she had.
Yeah. Well, and most of what she wrote is going to fit in our time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she wrote like a ton of short stories. So now, welcome to the world, a reintroduction to the world from Elizabeth E. Richards, who has a Pulitzer. So good job.
Yeah. Say that name again.
Laura E. Richards.
Yeah.
What did I say?
I was eating a cookie, but it sounded like you said Elizabeth E. Richards.
Oh, I may have because I'm looking at her name right now. Laura E. Richards.
Yeah.
Or originally Laura Elizabeth Howe.
That's where the Elizabeth.
Yeah, Elizabeth is her middle name.
Is her middle name,
which is my sister's middle name.
It's a good name.
Yeah.
It's the Queen's name.
It is the Queen's name. She's still kicking too.
Yeah. She was born during her lifetime.
Yeah.
She didn't become queen until a little later, right?
Yeah.
Her coronation was in the 50s.
I think coronation was in the 50s. Yeah. But yeah, they definitely crossed over.
Yep. So that was a fun one. What'd you think of that one, listener? Did you enjoy that sit around the campfire with us?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. That was delightful.
So I have a question for our listeners, and then we'll get to our passcode, and then we can write things up. Okay. But my question for our listeners, and obviously this will only apply to those who listen all the way to the end of our episodes, is when do you listen to our episodes? Is it something you listen to at home while you're doing chores and cooking or whatever? Do you cut out specific time just to focus on listening? Do you listen in the car? Do you listen while on mass transit? When do you listen to these episodes? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm intrigued as well.
When we help you pass the time.
Yay.
So reach out and
tell us. And our passcode for this, which you can email us or send on any of our social medias, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, yada, yada. We have a website. You can find us. Just Google Campfire Classics.
Yep. Yeah, there we've got it's easy to find us. But yeah, so we every episode we release a secret passcode. Please send it to us as either the subject of an email or message that you send us or somewhere in the body. And the passcode is I like thongs.
I like thongs. Yes.
That's the one.
Facts.
Just like that.
I like thongs and I cannot lie.
Oh, and the crossover continues.
The crossover begins.
All right. Anything to say before we sign off?
No, I say thanks for joining me from a ship in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And Ken's in New York. So international podcasting.
It seems like technically not international. Puerto Rico is still America.
I mean, technically I'm in the water, so I guess I'm in somewhere in between.
Oceania.
I'm in international somethings.
But regardless, thank you for tuning in, listeners. This has been it's been a fun one. This was a charming little story. Yeah. Let us know what you thought. Do reach out. And until next week, this has been Campfire Classics, where we try to read those books that look really good on your shelf.
The thong, the thong, thong, thong.